This tutorial is to help you produce a portfolio in Muse from the artwork that you've produced in this course so far. So I'm going to start by just doing a little bit of export. Going back to my logos file in Illustrator, and I'm going to export my McDonald's logo. So I'll just grab the artboard tool and maybe crop the artboard in a little bit, because the export will actually be based on the size of the artboard. So something like that looks about right. And I'll just go export for screens and export the artboard. I'm going to export it to a folio folder that I've already made on my desktop here. And I'm going to scale it to 50%. That's probably enough. You can experiment with how much you want to scale it. So we'll export that, and there's my PNG file. So I've got a few others here as well. I've got my logo and my Apple logo. So I've got a few of these that I've exported. Maybe I'll also go and have a look at Photoshop. I've got this very nice tattoo exercise that I did. Now if I go to the image size, I'll see that it's quite large. It's 2480, and I wanted it that large when I was making it, but now I'm exporting it for a website. I don't need it to be that big. So I'm going to go to the export, and in here I've got some choices, and again PNG, fine. The scale, I could take it down to about 33, a third the size, 827 pixels. You know, that's probably enough. So I will export that and make sure I'm exporting it to the same folder, desktop, folio, girl1, PNG. And so I build up a collection of maybe something between 10 and 15 images that I'm going to use in my gallery. So now I'm going to close up Illustrator and Photoshop and open Adobe Muse. Now, when I create a new document, a new site rather, in Muse, the defaults are that I have fluid width, so things will stretch as the browser size stretches, that I've got a maximum page width of 960 and one column. I'm just going to go with that at the moment. So, okay. Muse gives me one master page and one home page, and I'm going to start by setting up my master page. So on my master page, I can use Command plus and Command minus to look at it. I can view the page, what it looks like at 960 pixels wide, or maybe on a mobile phone that's only, say, 400 or 500 pixels wide. I'm going to start by putting a texture on my background, and if I put in textures, I get lots and lots of different types of textures. Quite like, don't choose anything that's too much like an illustration. Choose something that you can use as a background texture. Also look at the size, 3000 pixels. These big ones are fine. Yeah, any of these textures are fine. This one's getting a bit small, 753 by 1600. Anyway, I quite like the look of this texture. It's got a nice look, and things will sit on it quite nicely. So I'm just going to save that image to my portfolio page. I'll just call it paper, and it's a JPEG. So back in Adobe Muse, I can use File Place to grab my JPEG and place it into my page. Command minus and Command plus. Now I can scale my image, or I can crop my image. Now one of the things we notice is that when we go from the screen view to the mobile phone view, suddenly the background texture is only sitting around the top there. So I actually don't want this to scale. If I do a right click, I can see resize. At the moment it's responding to white. I can go resize none. And now when we go down to sort of a mobile phone view, it'll look more like that. And that's more like what I want. So now I'm going to put some text on my master page. Notice when I try and do anything here, it jumps up to the next breakpoint. So it jumps back to this 960. That's fine, don't get worried about that. Okay, so I'm going to draw a text in here, and I'm going to write Dr. Ken's amazing media tech portfolio. And the first thing I'm going to do is make that some nicer text. We don't want to use the very plain standard fonts of the internet. They were okay in previous years, but they're a bit tired and overused. I don't want to use any of my many wonderful system fonts because I can't guarantee that they'll be on the device that the viewer looks at. So what I can use are these new web fonts. So I'm just going to add a web font, and I'm going to filter it between the sans serif family, the serif fonts, the block fonts, the script fonts. Be careful using these. These are very difficult to read on a web page. The Gothic fonts, the what are these, monospaced fonts, the handwritten fonts, and finally the class just called the decorative fonts. For my heading, I think I'm going to use decorative font, and I quite like, I think I'll try something I've never used before, so I think I'm going to try Amboy Inline. So when I've decided I want that one, I'll just click OK, and it will install that web font, and now that font will be available for me to use. And I'll bump that up in size a bit, and I think I'll break that into 2 lines and actually take down the first one, Dr. Ken's amazing media technology portfolio, and I'm going to center that. So that's how we use web fonts. Now we're just going back for a moment. We can either go back to the plan view or website 2 view. Either tab will take us to the same place. And I'm going to, you can see now my master page is what I've been working on. The home page has whatever the master page has on it. And I'm just going to make some more pages. Vectors is one thing we studied. Video, I'm not going to call it 2D animation study, that's too long. Video, let's say web, and about. About page is where you'll like write a reflection. Now, this is the basic structure of my site, and now I need a navigation system. So I'm going into the widgets library, and I'm going to look in the menus section. By the way, there's lots of useful stuff here in this these widgets libraries. You'll get to know some of these. So for a mobile device, I'll use a vertical menu. For this format, I'll use the horizontal. So I'm going to just drop a widget in there, and it's very nice the way it immediately picks up the names of my pages. Now, we don't leave it in this gray. I'm going to style it. So I'll just click on one of the words, and let's see, I could style it with a color, for example. I could pick up, say, one of the colors from my background. I'm going to just make that a bit darker, perhaps. Yeah, that's starting to look better. I'm also going to change the font. I don't like this font. I'm going to use a font that I've downloaded that I like, called Chandler. Oh. No, not that one. Chandler Light. That's better. Yeah, that's the look I was after. So I can sort of scale that so that it looks a bit better, and maybe now I'm not sure whether it looks better white or black. But anyway, I'll play with that until it looks good. One thing to be aware of with buttons is that they have states. So if I click on my button widget and then on any button, I can see up here that I have normal, rollover, mouse down, and active states. And I'm going to actually probably get rid of the rollover state and the mouse state. I don't really need it, but the active state, I think I would like to do something with that, and it could be that I make it a bit more, change the color slightly, so that when we're on the home page, it will be this color. So let's just have a quick look at that in the preview. So in preview, I can now go to the home page, and the home page will be lit, or the video page, and the video page will be highlighted. There's nothing on any of these pages yet except what's on the master page, but we'll do something about that now. So back to the website, and I'm going into my home page, and I'm going to place, let's see, a nice welcoming image. I think our tattoo girl will work okay here. So let's place her on the stage, and we'll bring her down in size a bit. So I don't know, something like that. And so I might also look at putting a text field into here, and welcome, some kind of welcome message, and I might use some sample text here just for the moment. Sample text, and this is a site where we can just grab some text. Doesn't really mean anything, but it's a fairly common thing when you're designing to just put in some sample text, and you can set the text up as you want. So again, I'm thinking about this Chandler font. Why is that being so difficult to choose? I'm not sure. Definitely don't want Banshee. Okay. Right, so I'll play with the text a little bit later and with the fonts and try and set that up a bit better. And maybe Chandler Black. What does that look like? Yeah, okay. So I've got some work to do with the fonts. I also feel like I like fonts. I like text to sort of sit in a field, so maybe I'll use a sort of a black field or a darker field for my text to sit in. So I'm just going to maybe again pick up my color, darken it a little, maybe play with the transparency a little, and then put the field behind the text and see what that looks like. So yeah, I will end up sort of playing around with the text. I might also decide that that's actually too much text for my opening page, so I can just... So for my vector page, actually I'm just going to grab this text and this field behind it and copy them, because I'm going to do something similar on my vector page. I'm just going to drop this text in and maybe let's start thinking about putting some vectors in here. So I've got my wonderful McDonald's logo here, and I've also got a nice Chevy logo that I can put in here as well. So yeah, we can move these. Now be careful, these are not vector images anymore. So if we start stretching them beyond 100% in size, Muse will complain. We'll start to see pixels and they'll look horrible. So anyway, there are also some widgets that might be worth looking at here. If you look under composition, there's a couple of different types. Let's say if we tried to put one of these on the page, for example, you can see that this widget gives us some control over the pictures, and we get a thumbnail and we can get a large version of it. So you could possibly add your images to this widget and display them in this way. So on the video page, let's go to the video page, we're going to place a video. Now you've done something like, you've done a little show reel that's on YouTube, and your show reel will have a share link. So just grab that share link. There is a trick with putting it onto the web page in Muse. We use a widget, of course, and the widget we're using is under the social widgets. It's right down the end, the YouTube social widget. So I'll just grab that one and place it onto my page. Now it's got like a demo link there, which we're not going to use. In this video ID section, I'm going to paste my ID, but you'll notice you'll get an error unless you remove the full web address. It's just the ID at the end of the web address is what we need. Now I'm just going to go back to my home page for a moment to show you something. At 960 pixels wide, everything looks fine. And then we get down to about, I don't know, maybe 600, it's still okay. But after that, all sorts of things go wrong. My navigation buttons are all cramped up and they seem to have popped in between the text is trying to go to the next line. It's things go wrong at about 600. Now, to fix this, I'm not going to work on my home page. I'm actually going back to my master page. So I'm looking at around 600 is where I'm saying, okay, after that point, things go wrong here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here at 600. Now, I've decided that actually I don't want this navigation system at 600. So I'm going to highlight this one and go to the right click and go hide in this breakpoint. So now when it's above 600, I have my navigation bar and it scales nicely until that point, and then I don't see it. Also, I think I'm going to make this text a bit smaller here because I really would like to keep it on one line. So I'm going to take this big line here down to, I don't know, 418, and maybe this one down to 14, just so it gets a bit smaller. Now, does that stay as one point almost until the end there? You know what, I think I can just make this text field a bit wider, and then it should stay all the way down to 320. And after 320, it doesn't scale anymore. So, so that's working for the text, and that's working fine there. So at this point, at 600, I want to use the other navigation system, the vertical one. So I'm going to drag a vertical navigation system in place, and I would want to style it the same as the other one. But what I'd really like to do is to have this menu open and close when I need it. And I'm going to show you this little button I have here that I've downloaded. And I'm going to scale this to be like one of these kind of buttons. And what I want is to be able to click on this button and the menu appears, and then click again and the menu goes away. Now, there's a very cool widget that can do that for me. It's not really what it was designed for, but let me show you. Under panels, we have the accordion widget. So I'm just going to grab the accordion widget and quickly show you what that does. So it allows us to open up panels. I have 3 panels here, each with a heading, and I click on the panel. I also need to tick the behavior can close all. So now I can have all of them closed or one of the 3 open. Now I'm going to, so I've got 3 panels here. I'm going to just delete number 3 and number 2, and I'm left with one panel that opens and closes. And I'm going to use this function of opening and closing to make my menu appear and disappear. So I'm going to stretch this widget across my stage. I'm going to click until I've got the text highlighted and get rid of it. And then I'm going to drop my menu into this lower part of my widget and stretch it right across the stage. And now it closes and it opens. I would want to stretch that out over the top of my image here, and I would want to get rid of the fill. I don't need any fill there, and I don't need any stroke. So a little bit of styling to be done here to make it look good, but you get the idea. And then when it's closed, it also should have no fill and no stroke. And this word lorem ipsum, we need to get rid of that. So now you can see that the menu is working fine. So that should look good all the way through the smaller designs, the smaller resolutions, and at the bigger ones, yeah. So we want to make sure that we don't need to see this image. So I'm going to hide it in the breakpoint. When it's full size, we don't need to see that. And the same with the accordion widget. I want to make sure that I hide it in the larger format. So now if I scroll in, I can see that at 600 I go from my horizontal navigation to my vertical. By the way, let's leave it closed as the default. So I'm saving that and going to a preview and just testing that breakpoint. So there it goes to 600, and then we're into our mobile style. And there's a bit of a problem here that on the active state I've still got a solid color, so I'll need to go and fix that. Now, once you've got it working in the master page, you need to do a similar thing for each of the pages. So again, I might get down to like around 600 on the home page and decide, okay, that's getting a bit cramped there. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here also at 600, well, 602, that's fine. And I'm going to shift this text and sort of rearrange it. And make it go across the screen. And maybe center that. Center that. So as it goes from large, not only does the navigation change, but also the layout of the screen will change with that breakpoint also. The last thing I'm going to show you is about publishing. When we want to publish it to the web, we need to have a hosting service. Unfortunately, the Adobe hosting service called the Business Catalyst is not available now with our Enterprise ID. So if that's the case for you, which it probably will be, I suggest that you use a free hosting service. There are a few different ones out there, but ByteHost is the one I recommend. And you can sign up for free web hosting. I think I might do a separate video just explaining how to set up ByteHost for a free testing domain. in any case, once you've got that set up, and you will then have a set of control passwords that you set up with your free account, you will have an FTP host name and an FTP username, and you'll use those to connect to your FTP server. So that's taken about 2 minutes to upload, and once it's uploaded, I can see it in my web browser, and I can test out and see if my breakpoint is working and what I need to do with that. Okay, so that's about all I wanted to show you. Good luck with your website, and I'm sure it will look fabulous.